Obviously, the big story for new car sales globally has all been about a shortage of chips. Not the kind that you eat with ketchup, but the kind that make up computer brains. And that's crucial because all modern cars need them to go. There simply weren't enough chips to go around. And that's largely due to the fact that when we had all the lockdowns, car production slowed and manufacturers sort of cancelled their pre-orders for chips. On the other hand, electronics companies, and particularly mobile phone makers, increased their orders for whatever was left of the silicon slivers. Now, that meant that car production has since been severely affected. So the last 2 years have been bad for the car industry. In 2020, no one was buying because we were all in lockdown and the showrooms were closed. And in 2021, when actually a lot more people than usual did want to go out and buy cars, due to the fact that nobody really wanted to share public transport with other human beings anymore, manufacturers simply couldn't build enough of them. How frustrating that must have been. Can you imagine? Of course, this meant some bizarre anomalies in the new car market globally, especially when you combine this with increasing and a justified concern for the environmental damage and the climate change, as well as the impact of the car on our health and safety that we're all concerned about. So let's look at how all this impacted one of the biggest car markets in the world, the United States. It's the second biggest, actually, at about 15 million units sold after China, which is frighteningly close to 20 million units in a year. Though American sales were actually up 3.3% in 2021 compared to 2020, again due to that surge in demand and the weirdness of 2020. Imagine if they did have enough chips though, where would they have been? Now the chip shortage is an ongoing issue actually, and it's likely to last well into this year, 2022. It's believed that in 2021 North American car production fell by over 2.3 million cars and trucks being massively major in that market because of the chip shortage, and by the trucks, of course, I mean pickup trucks. In fact, even in an unusual 2021, trucks made up the bulk of sales, and only 4 of the top 20 selling cars there were passenger cars, 2 from Honda and 2 from Toyota. And that mention of Toyota brings us to one of the real big surprises of the year. Toyota toppled the that's GM, General Motors, off the top manufacturer slot. Now, to put that into context, the General has been at the top more or less continuously since 1931. I think Toyota has done this before, and it's an only just did it sort of thing, with the General shifting 2.2 million vehicles and Toyota just sneaking ahead at 2.3 million. Admittedly, even Toyota says that it was a bit of a fluke and insists that it would not be sustainable for them to stay ahead. Still, that was a pretty big deal. Less notable, but still significant, was the fact that Korean car makers Hyundai and Kia together jumped ahead of Honda in the US. They sold 1.5 million vehicles, that's just over 22,000 more than Honda, and that moved them to 5th spot overall, just behind Ford in 3rd, and Stellantis, which obviously incorporates Chrysler, which was in 4th. To be fair, the quality, style, and even the driver of their cars has been frantically improving compared to, the comparatively stationary Japanese brands. Let's be honest. Imagine next year when the sales of their brilliant EVs, Hyundai's Ioniq 5 and Kia's EV6, really take off. And sure enough, while not as spectacular and as obvious as markets such as, China, as well as Europe, the charge of the EVs is taking hold even in this gas-guzzling, petrol-loving nation. For the first time ever, I guess, an electric car made it into the top 20 bestsellers there. And that was the Tesla Model Y, though closely followed by the Tesla Model 3 on numbers. But that's interesting because it's the Tesla Model 3 that's doing the business for Elon Musk's car company in Europe and here in the UK. Anyway, they had a total of about 280,000 sales between those two models. Tesla's fourth quarter sales soared to 69%, so that helped. In fact, Tesla as a luxury brand actually beat Lexus, Mercedes, and Audi, slotting in just below BMW in the top 5 luxury car makers list. But I always said and maintained that Tesla would make hay while the electric vehicle solar panels shined on them, until the major manufacturers got serious about EVs. And along with Hyundai and Kia, which I've just mentioned, most of the Germans from Audi, to Mercedes, and significantly Volkswagen with the ID series did just that in 2021, as did some Stellantis group cars as well, from Vauxhall or Opel if you like, Peugeot and Citroën. Plus the Scandinavians with the Volvos and the Polestar, and of course Japan with the Nissan Leaf being one of the world's best-selling electric cars. In America, these aren't such big players. The Chevrolet Bolt, which could have been or was, but it suffered badly because of a major recall due to fire safety concerns, and that's a big deal, of course, when it comes to electric cars because they're so very hard to put out. The fires that is. However, this opened the way for Ford with its controversially named Mustang Mach-E to step forward into the limelight and take second spot with 27,000 units sold. Now that's small numbers compared to say the Teslas, but that's a brand new car, remember. I like the Mach-E. I listed that recently as my top favorite EV in another video. It's a great car and it does deserve success. I think we're going to see more of that in 2022. Though talking of the Mustang, and as they often say, some days you get the bear and other days the bear gets you. And when you turn to the traditional American triumvirate of motoring's age-old muscle car wars, in the last few years, the Mustang, which is, let's face it, the world's best-selling coupe ever, was and has been top dog. However, the old dog, or should that be dinosaur as some might assert, has been continuously learning new tricks. That, of course, is the current Dodge Challenger, which has been on sale for coming up to 14 years and remains determinedly, doggedly, and still unreservedly and unabashedly old school. Believe it or not, the Challenger actually managed to get past the Mustang for sales in 2021, and not entirely because of a lack of chips or anything like that. When it comes to fun, charismatic and evocative, Dodge knows how to do those things better than anyone else, including engineering and design. Most crucially in this case, they're very good at marketing. Now sales were up 3%, taking the total to over 54,000 cars, while the Mustang saw a 14% drop to about 52,000 sold. Sadly, the dynamically brilliant Camaro saw its sales drop by a much bigger 27% to just 22,000 units shifted, which is tiny for that part of the world. I reckon they never should have restyled that front. And rumors do persist that GM will kill it off altogether. That will be very sad. First no Trans Am and now no Camaro? But killing cars doesn't seem to be an option for Dodge, because not only the Challenger, but also that other behemoth, the Charger, saw its sales grow by 30% in its market share. Now, these are both cars that were supposed to be killed off years ago. And even Dodge will admit that they are pretty ancient underneath. But how could they dare end them now when they're still doing so great for them? Frankly, I do love both of these cars, primarily because of their old school feel, and also because of the huge value that they offer. Massive metal and power, reasonable money. It's what American cars used to be about, and that's what these two still offer. Until you get to those trucks, of course. Talking of which, let's do a quick rundown of the top 20 best-selling cars in America in 2021. Change at number 1, with the Ford F-Series taking its usual place in the top spot. And this includes, of course, the F-150, F-250 and F-350. Anyway, the F has been the top-selling truck there for well over 40 years. A redesign helped sales, and the chip shortage certainly hurt. So it was down 7.8% to 726,000 trucks sold. With 569,000 sales, the Ram pickup rose by 1%, getting past the Chevrolet Silverado to take second step on the podium. At 520,000 sales, the Chevrolet Silverado at number 3 was down 11.4%, though if you combine it with the GMC Sierra sales, I mean they're basically the same truck underneath, right? They do actually beat the Ford F-Series. The first Japanese car in this list, and the top-selling vehicle which is not a pickup truck, was in fourth spot, and it was the Toyota RAV4 at 408,000 sold, though that was down 5.3%. Another Japanese SUV in fifth, this time the Honda CR-V, which was actually up 8.3% with 361,000 sales. That car is amazing. And Toyota again, this time with its big saloon, the Camry, which took 6th place with nearly 314,000 sales, and that's up 6.6%. Now it's interesting because US brands led by Ford had kind of given up on selling four-door passenger saloon cars, citing a lack of demand, and yet Toyota manages to keep one, and there's actually one other saloon, in the top 10 best-selling cars in America. Next up though is the Nissan Rogue, or Nissan X-Trail as the rest of the world knows it. Now this took 7th spot, although keep in mind that sales in the state include the smaller Rogue Sport, which is actually a rebadged Qashqai. Anyway, the Rogue group was up 25.3% to 286,000 sales. Jeep's best-selling Grand Cherokee large SUV has just had a big redesign, and it's helped because sales were up 26.1% at over 264,444, though these numbers include both previous and new versions, which, by the way, the new version is now a 7-seater. Again, we find a Toyota in the top 10. This is the third one, in fact, and it's the Highlander SUV, which only recently went on sale also here in the UK for the first time. In America, it sold 264,128 units. That was up 24.4%. Honda's back, and oh look, it's another one of those saloon type things that apparently no one wants to buy anymore. Apart from the 263,787 people that bought the Honda Civic, which is up 1% and rounds out the top 10. Toyota's again now in the 11th spot with the Tacoma pickup, which shares its platform with the 4Runner. Sales were up 5.7%. The GMC Sierra was another GM product that suffered from a chip shortage, and it was down 1.6%, but it still sits in 12th place. Another saloon? This time, again, is from Toyota. This is the Corolla, which in fact, obviously, is the world's best-selling car, of course. In America, it sits in 13th place, and it was up 5.5%. A great-looking SUV, this, the Ford Explorer, took 14th position, but it was actually down 2.8%, with the Grand Cherokee, I assume, nabbing some of its sales. Talking of Jeeps, the king of off-roading prowess and the war veteran that soldiers on, the Jeep Wrangler sits in 15th place, and despite the arrival of a new arch nemesis in the shape of the Ford Bronco, continues to sell well with an increase of 1.6%, though sales did dip in the fourth quarter. Another Japanese saloon car, this time it's the Honda Accord, which took 16th slot with sales up 1.6%. How's this for percentage increases though? 191.1%, yep, a nearly 200% rise. What was that for? An EV, of course. It's the aforementioned Tesla Model Y. They sold 190,000 of these, 54% of Tesla's total US sales. Frankly, Tesla has been surprising analysts and people like me with ever-surging sales around the world. How long will this continue though? I'm keen to see. Mazda puts in an appearance in the top 20 at number 18 with the CX-5 SUV up 15%, the brand's bestseller, taking half of all Mazda sales in the US. Chevy sneaks another car into the top 20 with the Equinox, which got a facelift this year, but overall was 39% down, with GM again blaming those pesky chips. And finally, the Subaru Forester manages to get in and round out that top 20, although it was actually down 12.6%, though prior to that, Subaru's sales were increasing consistently for 12 years in America. There you go then, a roundup of 2021 for US car sales with quite a few surprises in there. Let me know if you're over in the States and if you bought a car last year, and if you did, which one was it? Or what would you have bought if you were gonna buy one? Plus, do you think Ford's truck will ever get knocked off that top spot, especially as now they're going to do electric one, or they are doing electric one? And can Toyota stay ahead of the General? And will the Mach-E beat the Teslas in 2022? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next video. A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at Air Technic, who are my top tier sponsors. Check them out for exhaust, brakes, suspension, and even body kits. Also, much appreciation to my tier 4 sponsors, Muhammad Ali Ahmed and Tom Conway Gordon. And of course, all of these other guys who have joined me on Patreon. Without their support, I can't be creating the content that I am doing. Perhaps you can join them. Head over to patreon.com/browncarguy. Even if you can't do that, make sure you're subscribing and sharing this channel, which of course is youtube.com/browncarguy. Also subscribe to browncarguy.com and follow me on all the socials. Just search for my hashtag, which of course is #browncarguy.